Welcome to the What is Smart podcast, brought to you by the Gardens Foundation. I'm Garrett Wilhelm, your host. This podcast dives deep into the ever-evolving world of intelligence, learning, and success. Join us as we engage with leading educators, psychologists, technologists, and thinkers unraveling insights and challenging old notions. What is Smart? Your guide to understanding intelligence in the 21st century. Let's embark on this journey of discovery together. Hello, everybody, and what is going on? I'm sitting here in the lab working on the future of learning, and this is the What is Smart podcast. My name is Garrett Wilhelm. We are brought to you by the Gardens Foundation. The Gardens Foundation's mission is to do the work to change education, and how you can support is simply by visiting www, and it's going to go here, by the way, www.thegardensfoundation.org. Go to our merch section. Yes, we have merch. We have sweatshirts. We have T-shirts. We're working on some other really great stuff, but all of the proceeds that are made go directly to our initial project, Global Pathways, with Johns Hopkins University. Oh my goodness, today we have an awesome guest, guys. From the trenches, she comes from the deep, dark depths of the schooling system that can take anyone's intrinsic motivation and stomp it right out. She is Lindsay Titus, a beacon of transformation and empowerment in the world of education, joining us today on the podcast after navigating through her own journey of stress and burnout. Lindsay had a profound realization. True change begins from the inside out. With her rich background as a classroom teacher, behavior specialist, love that, and board certified behavior analyst, also love that, Lindsay now dedicates her expertise to coaching educators. Lindsay, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being on What is Smart today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation. It's definitely a passion. And so, I think we're going to have some great conversations today.
Oh, awesome. And so talking about passion, let's just roll right into it. And for all the listeners and viewers out there, know that we don't spend a lot of time pre-talk. I've never met Lindsay. So this is exciting to kind of learn a little bit more. You talk about having a passion for not just education, but ultimately the bigger picture, right? Which is what I see as professional development, teaching teachers how to reframe their teaching so that kids can ultimately feel that. How do you think your past experiences because we always see growth come from pain. We always see learning come from failure. So explain to the audience how you got into education, how you got burnt out, and then ultimately what drove you to do what you're doing now.
Yeah, I would love to. So my journey into education really started not unlike probably many people, and that was a teacher that influenced me.
Yes.
For me, that was my second grade teacher. My family had just moved. I was born in Canada. My family had just moved to Buffalo, New York, and I started second grade. We moved, late August, and then early September, here you go. And well, it was literally like a 2-hour move, right? It was so drastically different for me. I sounded different. I was interested in different things, right? The TV shows that I had watched were different. The snacks that I ate were different. And I suddenly had this moment of like, whoa, like things are different. And that was really the first time in my life that I can remember, like almost, I call it like turtling, like kind of going inward and just being like, let me just do my own thing. And I'm just going to go to school and do what I'm supposed to do. And I'm going to follow the rules. And that was that. And I quickly realized I'm going to be quiet because when I speak, people make fun of me because I sound different.
Oh, wow.
And so I got really quiet. And that second grade teacher brought the world out of me. She made me feel safe and comforted. And, she had so much compassion to me. She's somebody that I stayed in contact with really all through high school, like until I moved away, essentially. And so from second grade on, the vision was, I'm going to be a teacher. Everything I did, everything volunteer experiences, like, which college I was going to go to, like everything was in this like really localized view that then I thought was the best thing because I knew exactly what I wanted. Now, I realized it was not probably the best thing for me. because what happened is my view was so minimal, if you will, or so focused, hyper focused, that I didn't really even ever consider, is there something else? Is there something, and maybe not something else like over here in left field, but is there an expansion, right? So I go all through school. I love it. I'm going to be a teacher. I didn't see any like negative things to teaching because it was exactly what I wanted. That changed the first day of school of teaching.
Oh, wow. Wow.
On the very first day of school, I was a special education teacher, self-contained, kindergarten through second grade, heavy behavior, combination in my classroom. And on that
trial by fire.
Yes.
Jesus.
That first day I go, what did I get myself into? I can't do this. I'm like, but this is my whole life. This is my career, right? And so I was able to kind of overcome that a little bit. Like it was hard. It was so incredibly difficult that led to year 5, which is where the statistic reigns. Year 5, I burnt out. And I said, I can't do this anymore. I am not meant to do this. I am terrible at it. Like every negative thought you could have, I had. And I think that part of my journey is so important because I realize now, because I've done so much work, I totally lived by the fixed mindset with a capital F. Like it was this or this, right? I've even said it just a couple of times in the journey, right? Like I'm not good at what I'm doing, so I must not be a good teacher, right? Even fixed in what I thought was a positive part of, well, this teacher made a difference for me. This is my calling. This is my passion. I have to be a teacher. And I didn't even ever consider, are there other things?
Right.
And so that burnout led me to discover other things. Now, the piece I knew is that education was in my core. Now, the why for that, I don't really know. It's truly an intuitive pull, an intuitive nudge that I just love. But I went out and over like a 10-year period, I tried a lot of different things. I worked for a non-for-profit learning agency where I worked with preschoolers. I got to do some like community-based support. I worked in-home for an in-home ABA therapy company where I got to really connect with parents and figure out this like home to school connection, but from the home perspective, which blew my mind. I worked for a residential center. And I just tried all these different things.
Sure.
And then over that time, I realized I call it like a job hopper. Like I was just trying all these different jobs, trying to find the one that was going to stick. And it didn't. I relate it to like a merry-go-round effect. So I rode all the different horses.
And then you were like, I'm still in this same damn spot. Yep.
Yes, I'm still in the same circle. Like I'm maybe a little bit of movement up and then I'm down, but I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not seeing the rest of the park. And so I decided to go back into the public school, but this time with a drastically different mindset of teaching isn't going to be who I identify as. Teaching isn't going to define me. I'm going to do that from the inside out, and I'm going to define who I get to show up as in any role. Because by then, when I returned back, I was a mom now. I had a daughter. I was married. So I had all these other roles that I didn't have 20 years prior. And so I'm still teaching. I'm still in the schools. And I've built Define University to help teachers go through this same journey with support, with somebody that can say, I've been there. Let's learn the lessons we don't tend to learn going to college to be a teacher. And that is the lessons of who the heck are you and who are you going to show up as you do this job or career that you do have a passion for. So.
Well, thank you so much. No, I think that's fantastic. And I do, first of all, want to say my ex-wife was from Buffalo. She grew up in Geneseo, or not Geneseo, Orchard Park. And I got married at the Saturn Club. So I'm very familiar with Buffalo. I'm very familiar with the area. Love to Buffalo. I think it's an amazing city. So I know you're not there now. But I think everybody in Buffalo has to get out at some point. They're like, please.
I didn't go very far. I'm only about an hour away.
Oh yeah, I think I saw Rochester, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dinosaur barbecue, man. You guys that so going good for you. Yeah, I know, right? So anyway, back on topic, I think your journey is the definition of one, a rarity, right? Because so many people hit that burnout point and then go on the merry-go-round and get shot out into a completely different career, right? And what's sad to me is when people go to school, when someone as passionate as you were in that teaching idea, right, coming out, you go into college, you go get trained to be an educator, and there's everything about, and this is the problem, right, with a higher education in general, but like everything about that actual career in practice is not taught. You know what I mean? They teach you the history of education. They teach you all kinds of stuff. But when it comes down to things like classroom management, the importance of maintaining as stress-free of a life as possible. And then the last thing is I wanted to comment on what you said, which is finding who you are and understanding who you are. Because I think why that's so important is because it empowers children in your classroom to do the same. All of those nuances that we think kids don't pick up on is what they're actually best in picking up on. So, you know, in our work, and we talk about this a lot on the podcast, in our work, what we've realized is said, here's this problem. The problem is the education system sucks at scale in America specifically. How do we actually change that? That's a big question. So we talk with great people like you, and what we kind of understood is that starts in the professional development, teaching teachers environment, because nothing will change if we're doing the same thing over and over again. That's Einstein's definition of insanity, you know, doing things over and over again and expecting a different result. So I guess I'm more so interested in your work currently as you work with teachers, whether it's one-off or, you know, a whole school of educators. How do you find best that you connect with those educators in meaningful instruction that helps them embody what they want in their classroom and ultimately where the future is leading?
Yeah. And so you bring up a really great point of professional development, or really training, I guess, for teachers. Because that first year, right, as difficult as it was, I was trying to absorb all this information, right? I'm like, okay, well, if I didn't learn it then, I didn't learn it in the last 4 years, where can I go learn it? And so I was reading every book I could find. I was going to every training I could think of. And I went to one training specifically. I honestly don't remember much about it other than the very last slide.
Mm.
The very last slide of this, you know, training that I had gone to was never forget, like something to the effect of like, never forget the power of you. You are the strongest tool in your toolbox, something to that regard. And I just remember sitting there thinking like, well, crap, like, I don't know who I am. Like, well, there's no way, again, it was in this fixed mindset category for me. Like, well, if I don't know who I am, then I can't use this strongest tool that I have and not, okay, I'm screwed. Like, it was this whole thing of like, what do you mean, right? So fast forward 20 years now, that is really what leads my professional development. Is I do believe that. I do wholeheartedly believe you are the strongest tool. Not the only one, right? There are definitely strategies we can use, but strategies only work when we have the belief in ourselves to carry them out.
And the understanding of ourselves.
And yes, and the understanding of who we are and our values,
Right.
so much that goes into it. So any type of training that I do, I don't even really love the word training because it has this connotation of like, come listen to me for an hour and then you're going to be great. Like, my whole thing is planting seeds. So anytime I can talk with somebody, whether it is a 2-minute conversation as I'm running into somebody's classroom and, you know, helping them through a situation, I'm going to tie in some gratitude and some reflection into that so that when
Love
I
it.
leave, the learning still continues. Same thing if I'm doing a full day workshop with a group of educators, you're going to find built throughout there are those daily practices that to me are essential that we do actually practice every day. We hear about them all the time. We hear about gratitude. We hear about reflection. We hear about giving ourselves grace. We hear about, you know, body scans and checking our energy. But the question then becomes, are we actually taking action to do them? And so, and we're not. Like, it's just it. So in my trainings, it's about every hour we do energy check-ins because I want it to become routine for your body to know it is normal to check in with yourself, right? When you give your students a brain break, are you giving yourself that same courtesy? And most
Amen.
teachers that I ask are like, well, no, I'm busy setting up the next activity. And so it's like, okay, but how do we get then to a place of being able to pause so that we can actually listen to our own bodies? Because when I talk about being a tool for your classroom, that's really it. It's being able to understand, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? Are they connected? Are they not connected? And what simple steps can I take to change that? And so that's really where I come from in trying to build in this inner capacity with this external world that we kind of share out to every single day.
That's right. And I think as you were saying that, one of the things is I was thinking of is buy-in, right? Like with that, talking about buy-in and working, let's say we want, because I think what we're talking about, which is so important for education, is cadence, is rhythm, is the everyday, right? Is building, embodying these practices. That also requires a lack of, or a lessening, if you will, of pressure, put down upon by it could be a private school system. It could be how one leader leads his core team or her team in the classroom. And that we do find that even with these structures built at the system, there's still amazing things that you can adjust within your little environment of that classroom that is yours. But do you find, or have you been put into a moment where you're faced with having a conversation with leadership, with admin, and saying, hey guys, look, same thing, right? Like if you guys want professional development that actually works, then we gotta get away from the current rules and the pressure. So talk to us a little bit about if you have those types of experiences and how they tend to go.
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, something that's not necessarily in my bio per se, because it was really relatively short-lived venture yet, is I was an assistant principal for 2 years,
Oh, there you go.
a couple years ago. And because of, I actually had my second daughter during that time and just realized right now is not the best time for administration because I can't give it my all, which is so important to me. But I was having the conversations before, and I certainly had them then, and yes, I have them now, in that a one and done is not going to change the dynamic. And I say that now, right? If I'm asked even within my district to give, an hour-long presentation at a faculty meeting, I will say, of course, because I'm never going to not provide an opportunity to plant that seed. But I say it just like that. I will plant the seed at that faculty meeting. I will do the best that I can to cover these agenda points. And then I ask, my question to you is, how are we then going to build momentum from that so that we now have checkpoints, we now have resources, we now have a way for when teachers want to learn more, they know what to do. Or when we're saying, hey, we're going to go this route, then what are we taking away? Because we can't just continue to add without shifting the balance, right? Without shifting the weight, if you will, the load, if you will. And they're met, as you can expect. Some are like, yep, we're all in, here we go. Others are like, we hear you, we just can't right now. And something that I've learned over the years in doing this work is I've truly learned what I can control and what I can't. And that whole, circle of control. We hear about it all the time. We see the templates, but have you actually printed it out and done the activity? That is something that I do offer coaching. I offer one-on-one as well. I offer 3 different styles of coaching to educators because, again, one size is not going to fit all. And one of the things we do really early on in sessions or in activities is actually filling out that paperwork.
Yeah.
And actually identifying what can we absolutely control, because I can't control what they do. I can't control what somebody else does. I can control what I do, though, and how I interpret my emotions and how I feel the things that I'm feeling. And so when I learned to stop fighting and getting so defensive and saying, but it has to be this way. And I started saying, okay, but I can control this and I can impact, influence, inspire, motivate, push, whatever other words I want to use. But that's their outcome. That's not mine. I get to still show up and say I did the best I could with what I had, and I'm proud of that. Now I'm going to reflect and see if there's something different I need to add next time. And I think that piece has been really key, that we can be so excited about where we're going, but we also, that future version needs to start with loving who we are today. Because I can't become that future version without me here today, right? I can't become Lindsay next week if I'm not Lindsay here today.
That's right. And like, I think a couple of things I was thinking about and I wrote them down because I'm learning as I've done podcasts for years and years and years, but finally I'm like, I should use my ADHD tools. You know what I mean? One of the things that I thought a lot about was, kind of the different types of requests you get for professional development environments, and how really what we're asking is, if you're called into a group and you talk for an hour, they're basically saying, you know what, Lindsay, you have to move people. You have to go in and emotionally move people. And sure, that's not challenging at all. But the reality is, how challenging is that? That's like a 10% chance or 10% of the people are going to walk away, no matter what the group, with like oh yeah. And then, how different that is from what I think of as alongside coaching, right? Like consistent coaching where you have the ability to establish trust, and then ultimately free up the percentage, to actually move someone because they trust you. So the other thing that I thought of was the through line that you were explaining for professional development experiences for educators. I keep coming back to, you're describing what a classroom should look like with learners. You know what I mean? You're describing exactly what a classroom should look like with learners is, having the ability to have a teacher alongside them, working through things, not just being barked at, because we know the data around being barked at. We know that most people, and even if we want to look internally, right? I know that when someone's barking at me, I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. I've got the brain of like, it's just like bing, 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 bing all the time. So it's super, super interesting how you've gotten to this place where the classroom and the learners and your burnout has helped to craft your process. Because I think that's where the best things come about. So that being said, when it comes to, your professional development career, you said are you still in the classroom? Is it more so just through other educators, or is it actually in the classroom with learners?
I am, nope. Yeah. So I'm still full-time in a school district, currently as a behavior specialist. So I work in many schools. I actually have decided, though, in the fall to go back into a single classroom, and we'll be teaching once again, which is super exciting. But yeah, no, I'm still right there living it day to day.
Yeah. So that's amazing. And the other thing that I'd like to kind of talk about, you mentioned behavior and your behavior analyst side of things, specialist side of things. Is that a social work degree? Is that what that's through, or is it a psychology degree?
So for me, there's a lot of different pathways you can take.
I was just going to say, yeah.
Yep. I'm certified as I'm certified as a gen ed and a special education teacher. Because again, that was the pathway I was going to take. And one of the things before I did kind of fully hit my burnout in year 5 is in year 2, I realized I was going home and I was frustrated, right? I was overwhelmed. I was all the things that new teachers tend to feel. But the thing I couldn't stop thinking about, was behavior. Like I really didn't come home thinking like, oh, I'm so excited about that reading lesson tomorrow, or I can't wait to teach that math lesson tomorrow. For me, it was, I can't wait to learn more about this behavior. I can't wait to learn about a strategy that might help this student. And so that's when I decided to start the certification to learn more about behavior, which I chose to do through the behavior analytic route. And even that has so shifted my mindset over, I'm very much more on the natural end versus, I think ABA, there's 2 distinct sides to it. I'm fully on the compassionate side of student-led and student experiences. But it definitely gave me an awareness of behavior and behavior change. And that's really, when I look at it, I really stopped looking at behavior as something to manage. I say like we have restorative practices and we have academic practices, we have social emotional practices, and then we have behavior management. And I'm on this like quest of like, why can't we have behavior change practices too? Because these are things that
Mm,
need to happen every day, because behavior is behavior. It's communication. We know that. It's telling us something about an unmet need. And if I'm going to say, okay, do this, and we're going to eliminate the behavior, then I'm saying we're going to eliminate part of that student. And that's just not possible. And that's not
amen.
what I want as a human being. And so it's something that I think is so important that as I learned more about that process and how now I'm really learning about how the brain works and how it's all connected, and it's fascinating. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways too, is I always want people, again, whether my professional development is coming in a form of a conversation, through coaching, through actual workshops, I want you to stay fascinated in the field. I want you to stay fascinated and curious, because the moment
Curious.
we lose our
Yeah.
curiosity, we're done, right?
Yep.
We don't have that fire within us. And so if I can ignite a little spark of curiosity, then I know it's going to continue to build your momentum. And that's what I want to provide.
Yeah. And gosh, we're very aligned in the whole behavior side of things. I think, in our schools, but it's early learning, which is again super fundamentally important in my opinion. A lot of permanent learning is being done there. But there's this air of like, what is your discipline policy? And I'm like, well, I don't like that word in context too, because discipline isn't a bad word. Discipline applied to the right situation is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Discipline in that sense is a bad word, because there's only negative aspect or negative outcomes from a disciplinary system when it comes to behavior. So props to you, because I think landing on that side, and my stepson's autistic and he's nonverbal, and so we work a lot with BCBAs and therapists and ABA in general. And you're right, there is kind of two aspects. There's that rote, do it, do it, do it, do it, and then there is the compassionate side. And to be very honest, to open the little heart up, is like, I am so rooted in that consistent behavior just because I have worked with so many kids in my career.
Mm-hmm.
My wife is the compassionate, as she should be with with mom, but to learn a lot more about that has been fascinating, right? Like that you can be consistent with a loving heart, with a compassionate heart. So that being said, talking about behavior, one of the things we've noticed in schools in general, and I'm very curious, going back to your importance of curiosity, have you seen post-pandemic a rise, and I'm just feeling this out, I have an answer, but a rise in behavioral issues within school systems? And if so, why do you think that is?
Mm-hmm. I think I'm asked that question like each week.
Oh, really? I'm sorry. Let's
No.
reverse and not put that question on. No, I'm kidding. I am curious.
No. And I love it though, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a great answer, right?
Sure.
I think people are looking for the answer, and there just isn't one, right? So the simple answer is yes. Yes. If I'm looking at, I was in this role from my district, I was in this same role pre-pandemic. I'm back in it post-pandemic. Because I look at I'm a data nerd. I love it. Understanding that numbers are part of the story, right? Like, again, it is not the whole story, but if I look at that, then yes. Now, so not only are we seeing an increase in kind of frequency and intensity, I think the more challenging part is we are seeing increase, that intensity piece is huge. So what I would be called into support 4 years ago is almost more like tier 1 support now, right? What was tier 3 then is almost tier 1 now. Now, why?
Biting, slapping, hitting, punching, tier 1. Forget. You're like, what's tier 4? Jeez Louise.
No, those are some good examples of tier 3.
Oh, got it. Okay.
But those were more, they were, I'm not gonna say minimal because we were having them, but they was not to the intensity. And we're seeing them now at earlier ages than we were seeing them before.
I can concur with that.
And the why I think is truly, I go internal to the way that our brain works.
Mm.
And so there has been some degree of disconnect, right? And I'm not going to blame the pandemic. I'm not going to say it's parents' fault or it's this fault or it's that fault, because again, I think if we get stuck in faulting people, we don't ever come up with a solution, because we stay stuck in the defensive mode. So there is this disconnect within the brains between the different levels. And our students, for some reason, are staying more in that survival emotional part of their brain than moving
Fight or flight.
into their prefrontal cortex, right? Which we know is still developing. That's one of my favorite
executive functioning for all the listeners out there. I love it. Let's nerd out. Come on.
One of my favorite things to say is, like, our brain isn't fully developed until, I think at least 25 is where the research is saying now. So,
and there's another period. Sorry to interrupt. There's another period, because one of the people that we're having on the podcast soon is Dr. William Stixrud. He talks a lot about this, wrote a book called The Self-Driven Child. There's a period later on in life where there's malleability in the brain, like seniors, 60 something beyond. And you do see, like, now that you like refer it to the people close to you, you're like, yeah, like they shifted who they were personally, like out of nowhere. So anyway, keep going, because I'm super fascinated.
It's so fascinating, right? That's what I mean. Like, get fascinated about something, like do your deep dives and love it. And so there's this, I do a training right now for and I'll say to them, like, so I say, any teachers in the room that younger than 25, like you got an out here, like your brain's still flipping, right? But that connectability, right? So we know if I'm not connected, then I'm protected. I'm protecting myself. And I see so many students that are in that protective zone right now. And I have wonders. I don't know if it's because they weren't out in the community, so they're not as trusting with other people. And so they're more, again, stuck to that protection. So they are doing the fight, flight, freeze mode way more frequently than we saw before. Do I think that's a factor? I absolutely do. But I don't have any like clear cut, like, I think this is why, but those are my wonders, is I think there has to be this connection between the connections in their brain that for whatever reason, those synapses they're not happening as early as maybe they did before, or that safety factor is still playing that relevant role.
Well, I would even think too, to jump on top of that, is you had a lot of kids, let's even think young kids all the way through to, high school. You had a lot of kids in the formative years of their development, right? Talking about brain development, denied access to the nuance that we don't understand what we're learning when we're learning, which is the world, which is other people, which is diversity, which is, friction, somebody disagreeing with you, somebody, even for young babies, being able to look around and see that the world is different and that there's all this really interesting stuff. And, change, the immediate response to change is uninformed pessimism or fear. And so as such, you have parents who we all looked at the TV, went, oh shit, we're in trouble now. Like, we have to be, am I going to die? Is this virus going to, all of those things went into all of us, and then down the road completely got muddied, which was ridiculous. And the outcome of educators on that. But you have all these people scared, and kids are just sponges for that fear, don't know how to process it. It then processes externally as behavior. So that's my best guess, is there is this disconnect of like, well, crap, we're home. And this is the crazy part. This is the dynamic that has been established because of the pandemic. Again, no one's fault. Is parent for young child is this role of working. And we see them working. And we see that their time is distracted. And we see that, before, a lot of times, in a lot of scenarios, you drop your kid off at school, you go to work, they're busy, you're busy, you come back, it makes sense. Nowadays, more so in the pandemic, you had everybody there and distracted and disconnected. And that's why I think that disconnect was so visible to kids, because fear makes you in your fight or flight state. And the moment, that's what people don't understand, because I love that you said that. Parents, when your kids are screaming at you and you scream back, guilty, hi, guilty, Guilty. I have 5 kids. So don't think like when you do that, you immediately shut down their ability to learn. And then you expect something different. Like that's, I think, such a game-changing thing when it comes to, behavior in the classroom is I really feel like going back to how you engage educators, we need to be teaching kids to better understand themselves and to have an avenue, right? Like make it a subject in class to feel safe enough to express those things, because through that expression, you're processing. What I fear is kids are burying, because that's what our brains do naturally, right? To protect themselves. I love, what was it? Protected, not connected. Mm-hmm. So as we wrap up, I like to keep things 30 to 45 minutes, car ride home, but I'm fascinated with your not just your work, right? Because there's behavior therapists and analysts and professional development, but your take on it and how you got there. I think, understanding that you going through the process of self-discovery immediately like had this light bulb go, well, there's a million others like me. I would imagine if I thought about how I got out of this and then made that into something that would work for other people. And look at you now. I think it's just great. So I ask you like I ask everybody, and this is a big question and there's no right answer. I've heard amazing answers. They're all interesting and amazing. But I have to ask you, Lindsay, what do you think SMART is?
So I had a feeling that question might be coming.
It's the title. You know what I mean?
I've been looking at it the whole time, right? To me, I think SMART is trusting in who you are. I think SMART is having this intuitive nudge and saying, you know what, even though maybe this person did it differently, I'm going to trust what I'm being called to do or what I'm feeling, right? I'm going to trust that this feeling is going to tell me, help me understand this story, help me understand who I am. And I think when we follow who we are at our core, it's impossible to get things wrong, because then there is no right or wrong. It's simply what is. And that's a place that I try really hard. I'm not there 100% of the time, but I try really hard to live in, because then I can honor the steps that I take, the growth that I make, as well as the mistakes that ultimately are the best learning opportunities that I have.
Oh, okay. I'm going to let that sit in so we can clip that later. That was amazing. One of the things I have on my background of one of my screens is this picture Dr. Damian Bevel of Boston College shared with me. It is a picture that it's a school in Brazil. I wish I could show it. I don't know if I can, but it's a pic. I'll show it on the podcast when I edit it, but it's a picture of all of these knobs in Brazil in a school. And then the kids write their failures on it. And it's called My Favorite Failure Wall. Right. And so the kids celebrate their failures. They learn from their failures. And that, I think, is having the safety to do so for teachers, for students, is one, a big ask, because we're asking a lot to change within school. Mm-hmm. But I hope, I know, let me say, I know that this is happening, this growth, this change, this shift, because there are folks like us. There are folks like you out there doing the work, changing that teacher. You might have already saved some student who is connected the same way you were connected to your second grade teacher. For me, 2 teachers, 6th grade, Mr. Hollingsworth, 7th grade, Mr. Greenberg, history, like that's enough for me, right? Like to go and do that work and know how that feels, to know that you through a teacher saved a student. So kudos to you. I think you're spot on when it comes to what is SMART. There's no right answer. Parents, think about that if you're listening. Teachers, think about that. SMART is contextual. One of the best things I heard was, someone can be the best student following that white and black line like you did, right? Put them in the middle of a forest with an indigenous tribe. Who's smart now? Mm-hmm. And I think about that all the time. So true. So again, Thank you, Lindsay, for joining us today. Please tell our listeners, our viewers, how they can find you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So the best place, Instagram is the social media platform that I'm on the most, which is Lindsay Titus EDU. And then Define University is my website. It's Define YOU University, which is again a play on defining who you are, regardless of any role that you serve. So you can show up as your true, authentic self, hopefully in the simplest and easiest way. That's what we aim for.
I love that. I love that. So thanks again for joining us. And we'd love to have you back on. We have a summit coming up soon where we're going to have a lot of guests on in the same room, discuss some really big topics with some really awesome people just like yourself. So with that being said, thank you for listening to What is Smart today. Please support us. We're humble folks. So please support us. You can go to www.thegardensfoundation.org. You can donate, you can buy merch, you can do all of those things. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.